Welcome to the National Virtual Conference on Reinventing Excellence in Librarianship organized by LIS Academy. Myself, Parthasarathi Mukhopadhyay, working in University of Kalyani, Department of Library and Information Science in the capacity of a professor. I welcome you all as a plenary chair of the Theme 5. The focus of Theme 5 is role of libraries in inculcating research ethics. And the topic of deliberation is academic integrity. Can we get serious now? Now the first question is that why library professionals need to know about academic integrity? The answer is quite simple. If you observe the workflow of the academic libraries and special libraries in our country, in most of the cases the libraries have been entrusted with the task of plagiarism checking and different kind of research ethics. So we need to learn the ball game of academic integrity. We need to know that plagiarism is not the only facet of academic integrity, how we are doing in our country, and what are the future possibilities and ongoing changes in the domain of academic integrity. Academic honor code is basically developed by Don McCabe long back. He is considered as the grandfather of academic integrity. You can have a full article on Don McCabe from Wikipedia. He emphasized that academic integrity is a value system that includes avoidance of cheating or plagiarism, maintenance of academic standards, honesty and rigor in research and academic publishing. So basically it's a value system and honor code. So let us have a look before making a quantum jump in the Indian situation. Let us take a look at what other universities in developing countries are doing. So here you can see in the screen that I have given a best practice guideline developed by International Center for Academic Integrity, that is called ICAI. The website address is academicintegrity.org. It was actually established way back in 1992 with the help of a group of North American universities alongside a few universities from Europe. So what they said in this best practice guideline, they said that entire academic integrity is based on the baseline of courage. Now on that particular baseline of courage, there are 5 pillars of academic integrity: honesty, trust, fairness, respect and responsibility. So these are the 5 pillars of academic integrity, and they have emphasized in their best practice guidelines how a university can combat the situation related to different facets of academic dishonesty. So this guidebook is completely free. You can download it for your further knowledge. Before entering into the Indian situation, we will be talking about different activities taken by different international communities related to academic integrity. Here you can see the spread of geographical spread of ICAI, International Center for Academic Integrity. It has wide presence with membership more than 200 plus universities. Many North American universities are part of this movement. A few European universities and Asian universities has also joined the movement, but till date no universities from India is actually a member of ICAI. We need to consider this for our universities. Now let us look at what the greatest academic institutes of the world are doing. So here you can see the Harvard College Honor Council. So they prepared an honor council, and here if you go through the particular honor code created by Harvard University, you can find they are not in the process of terrorizing students and scholars. Rather, they wish to build a value system inside the students and learners related to different facets of academic integrity, and from their guidebooks and guideline it is quite clear that plagiarism is not the only factor related with the academic integrity. But in case of India, we are basically thinking academic integrity and plagiarisms or anti-plagiarisms are synonymous, and we basically use these two terms interchangeably. But that should not be the case. Again, another university you see, the Ivy League University, Stanford University, they have an office of the community standards, student affair office. They have prepared a detailed guideline, detailed honor code related to academic integrity, and only a few things are related with the plagiarism. And you can go through the things they have developed, the website address I have given. So this is all about Stanford University. Now let us check the situation, what is happening in India, what is the situation in India related to academic integrity. Here in this particular area also we wake up late, very late actually. You see, ICAI was established in the year 1992, but UGC first came up with a regulation related to academic integrity only 2 years back in July 2018. Now if we go through this 6-7 pages of regulation, we will find interestingly that no other facets of academic integrity have been included, except only plagiarism. So what is the concept related to the section 5 of the regulation? In section 5, UGC is actually advising all higher educational institute that they should conduct regular sensitizing seminars, awareness programs to build the value system related to academic integrity. It should be part of the UG level courses and PG level curricula. It should be part of the research coursework. But only 2 points they have mentioned about plagiarism, point number 4 and point number 5. So of these 6 points they have they have given advice on the basis of these 6 points. Only 2 actually concerned with the plagiarism. Rest are actually dealing with different kind of course structure related to academic integrity. But in universities of India, we actually overlook the first 3 points or the first 3 advices given by UGC, and we only are emphasizing on point number 4 and point number 5, because no universities, no undergraduate courses, no postgraduate courses in India still include research ethics in their curricula. Only 2-3 classes we allot in case of research coursework and different kind of coursework related to PhD program. So UGC also advised that each department, each PG department should have departmental academic integrity panel, DAIP, and at the institutional level we should have IAIP. Even this is not happening in Indian universities. Most of the cases in PG department, departmental research committees are actually taking the responsibility of DAIP, and IQAC at the institutional level taking the responsibility of IAIP. But UGC specially mentioned that these two organ or these two committees must be different from each other, and they have also given the composition of these particular committees and boards. Now if we go to the section 12 of this particular regulation given by UGC, you see all about penalties. There is no attempt to inculcate the values related to academic integrity inside this particular regulation. They are only talking about the plagiarism, and both related with the dissertation, PhD dissertation, master's level dissertation and research publication. And they have created 4 levels. Up to 10% there is no penalty, but beyond 10% you will be having penalties from 10 to 14%, some kind of punishment 40 to 60%, and beyond 60%. But you see again, there is no research base that why cutoff point is 10%. Nobody knows. If 11% you are punishable, if 9% or 10% you are free from any kind of penalty. So this kind of cutoff marks, what is the basis, what are the research data associated with this kind of cutoff? Nobody knows simply. These are the things happening in the name of academic integrity in India. But we failed to understand largely that academic integrity is not all about plagiarism. There are many facets. So I'm trying to prove my points that there are many facets beyond plagiarism in the domain of academic integrity. Now if we go to in the next slide, in the slide number 11, if we go to the Red Trucks and Watch database, it's a global service which are basically collecting data related to papers and different other research products which have been retracted for different reasons, different academic reasons. So if you go through this particular website retractionwatch.com, you can find they have created user guidelines, and in the user guidelines appendix B they have consolidated 90 plus reasons that can lead to retraction of a research paper, and all these 90 plus reasons they have arranged alphabetically with proper description and other things. Now in this next slide number 12, you can see that these are the alphabetical listing of all 90 plus reasons that are related to retractions of papers all over the world, that only 4 factors are actually related to the plagiarism. Plagiarisms of article, plagiarism of data, plagiarism of image, and plagiarism of text. Rest 84, 85 reasons are not actually related to plagiarism. So what is happening as a whole, our Indian researcher and students think that plagiarism is only a factor related to academic integrity, and all other factors we simply do not know, we are not aware of it, and simply we do not follow, and that is giving a bad kind of results. I am going to show you that what is happening because of this lack of awareness related to different facets of academic integrity. Now, that Retraction was created a database also, retractiondatabase.org. It is freely available, anyone can utilize it. And here you see we have given here a very simple kind of search criteria. We have selected country as India, all are earmarked with red circle. Then we have selected last 10 years, 1st January 2010 to 31st December 2019, and we may performed a search query there. So it retrieved all the retracted paper, those are originated from India, and you can see another red mark in the bottom part of the slide that 106 number of papers have so far been retracted which are actually originated from India during the last 10 years. You can see that apart from all the search criteria we have taken earlier, we have added another search criteria, that reasons for retraction related to only 4 factors of plagiarism, that is plagiarism of article, plagiarism of data, plagiarism of image, and plagiarism of text. Now here you see the result, only 310 number of papers actually have been retracted due to plagiarism out of 106 number of retracted paper. So only around 1/3 of the papers that have been published in India are retracted due to plagiarism, and 2/3, that is the majority of the papers produced in India are have been retracted for different other reasons, and our scholars simply do not know what are the other reasons that may lead to retraction of their research output. So this is a sorry state of affair as far as academic integrity India is concerned. And as a library professional, this is our role to tell our user, to make our users aware, our learners, researcher aware about the availability of this kind of resources, this kind of databases where they can check different possible errors and they can rectify themselves. Inside our research ethics program, inside our coursework related to PhD program, we simply do not teach this kind of availability of this kind of tools for the helpful for the which can help our researcher to a great extent. Now, how these syntactic similarity based anti-plagiarism tools are doing, whether they are performing their job properly or not, that is actually our concern. Now here you can see that all plagiarism software are basically take the file, break the text into semantically related sentences and phrases, then check pattern and similarity by following an algorithm which is called single algorithm, and this algorithm is actually meant to uniquely identify a string of text. Now here lies the problem. Because of this syntactic similarity based anti-plagiarism tools are not performing their job properly. Now you can see here I have gathered the top 10 anti-plagiarism software in the world, and from this top 10 we can again reclassify or regroup the 4 mostly used anti-plagiarism software, Turnitin with the highest user base 30 million, and followed by Urkun, PlagScan, and Unicheck. So I am taking here Turnitin as a representative, as it is the topmost anti-plagiarism software. I am taking Turnitin as a representative of the array of anti-plagiarism software. Okay, so let us check what research says and how they are doing. In the slide number 18, you can see that how financially well off these companies are. These are Turnitin established in the year 1998, and basically they have reached up to a level in so that in 2019 they procured a company Advanced Publication at the cost of 1.75 billion. Mostly the Turnitin makes annual review, average annual review 127 millions. But you see here in the bottom part of the slide number 19 that Joseph Thomas once said that there is a serious problem, and it is too much to expect a commercial company like Turnitin is actually quite serious in adhering the values related to academic honesty, academic integrity. So it is too much to expect from a commercial company like Turnitin, because plagiarism is their bread and butter and they are actually living on the top of plagiarism. So they are not quite serious to reduce the level of plagiarism in different academic activities. So if you go to the InsideHigherEd.com, it's a beautiful websites produce different kind of reports related to the performance of different anti-plagiarism software. Here you see one particular experiment I am citing here. One experiment took 23 plagiarized school essays and compared the relative performance of 3 tools, Turnitin, SafeAssign and Google. So here you see in 9 cases Turnitin failed out of 23. In 13 cases SafeAssign failed out of 23, but simple Google search actually came with the flying color and it failed only in 2 cases out of 23. So simple Google search is performing better than the $1 million tool like Turnitin. Now another research work from the same website InsideHigherEd.com, it shows it took a large sample 37 school essays, plagiarized school essays, and it checked Turnitin that it found only 40% of the plagiarism, partially found plagiarism in 16% of the document, and failed or not found any plagiarism, although these are heavily plagiarized, in case of 4% cases. So 44% cases Turnitin failed to detect plagiarism, for which we pay millions of dollars every year to the company. We conducted a very simple experiment. We took a particular research, 2 paragraphs from a research article available from ALA TechSource, chapter 1 on web scale discovery, written by John Vaughan. So these 2 paragraphs we now came to Google Translate and translated that particular English text into Bengali. So in the next slide, in the slide number 23, you can see we have taken the input of the translated Bengali text and retranslated that one into English, and finally utilized Grammarly apps to correct the different kind of grammatical errors produced in the Google translation and sent it to Urkun for checking similarity. Urkun finds similarity but only 5%, and failed to detect the source article. So we first take the English text, converted into Bengali, then took the converted Bengali text, retranslated into English, and Urkun failed to find the sources, and this may happen with different other anti-plagiarism tools. So that's why Carl Strom-CM once said that we are paying instructor less, but we find money to pay these policing tools that actually does not work. And another article published in Nature by Deborah Weber-Wolf, in the bottom part of the slide number 24, you can see that plagiarism detectors are a catch and a problem. So these are not actually working as expected against our huge payment also. And this is the situation. But the question is why they are failing, because most of the anti-plagiarism tools solely depend on the syntactic similarity. They do not take into consideration the semantic similarity. So if you considerably rephrase a particular paragraph or a sentence, so it fails to find out. So there lies the scope of the semantic similarity. Semantic similarity are actually based on the 2 vector. One is called the order vector based on the syntactic similarity. Another is called semantic vector, which is based on the semantic similarity. And you see here there is a free tool called dandelion.eu EU. So if you use this particular tool, you can check. Here you see we did another experiment here. We took a phrase related to international cooperation. In the slide number 26, you can see that we rephrased in a completely in a different way, but the meaning is the same actually, and syntactical similarity reduced to 0%, you can see, and still semantic similarity shows it is 66% plagiarism. So this kind of semantic similarity they don't take into consideration. That is one of the problem. So another example I have given for the similarity checking from the library science domain. So the first in the upper part of the slide number 27, you can see the original text that is actually rewritten and rephrased in the next sentences, and these two sentences we matched for the similarity. And here you see, although I rephrased this particular sentences but the meaning is the same, syntactic similarity I managed to keep within the permissible limit, that is 9% only, less than 10%, but semantic similarity is still significantly higher. So these are the point of consideration they don't take into purview. Another important issues related with the semantic similarity, you can see from the slide number 28, they can raise different kind of false alarm. So what is the false alarm? So here I am giving you one example. I have taken one sentence: James Cameron, who is basically the director of the very popular movie Titan, wins the Oscar in Best Director category. And in the same year, David Cameron, another completely different person who was ex-PM of UK, wins general election in UK. Now here you see, here falsely or misappropriately, syntactic similarity goes up to 42%, but still you see semantic similarity is less than 10% or non-significant. It means that this syntactic similarity based anti-plagiarism tools may raise false alarm in different cases. Two sentences are completely different from each other, still they show they are actually related with each other. So this kind of problems are associated with syntactic similarity based anti-plagiarism tools. So one research work I would like to refer here, this research work performed by Kevin Walchuk from the University of Ontario. So he raised a very interesting question, three research question. I would like to give you the emphasis on the third research question in slide number 30, that is Turnitin able to detect plagiarized ideas and content in written submission? And you see what he answered actually at the end of his research. He said categorically that all this kind of anti-plagiarism tools based on syntactic similarity actually fails for the older materials. So if I plagiarize some documents from document published in 1970 and beyond, then Turnitin or other related software will fail to recognize it. And if you come to the bottom part of this particular slide, what he answered against the research question number 3, that Turnitin or any other anti-plagiarism software was unable to indicate whether textual submission was similar from a semantic perspective or not. Identifying more advanced and difficult forms of plagiarism were beyond the software's capability and scope of the design. That means they are not in a position to check semantic similarity or idea plagiarism. They only go for the text plagiarism. Now apart from semantic similarity, another new kind of development is ongoing in our the domain of academic integrity. So the 2019, this is actually called the AI for text generation. In 2019, this is considered as the best year of AI text generation. Different companies came up with different language models. Google came with BERT model, OpenAI came with the GPT-2 model, NLP came with Elmo, and J. Howard came with ULM FIT. So amongst these four models, actually GPT-2 or GPT-3 developed by OpenAI won the battle of AI text generation. In 2020, 2 months back, in June 2020, actually GPT-3 came up, actually developed by OpenAI, and it's a gigantic language model in compare with the GPT-2. And you see what it can do. But before that, you need to have an idea that what is this AI text generation. So these are there. Here in the slide number 33, I have given a screenshot of mobile text prediction. You are all habituated with it. Then the text prediction or a few word prediction performed by word processing software, and finally you see in the bottom part of the slide how Gmail actually implemented BERT model and now can predict a few words when you are writing your email. So GPT-2 or GPT-3 is actually working in the same fashion, but much more advanced level. It can predict a sentence if you give a paragraph, or GPT-3 if you give a sentence it can predict a paragraph. So this is called AI text generation, and you can see in your own eyes. GPT-3 came, as I said, in 2020. Actually it is different from the GPT-2 in the sense GPT-2 came up with only 1.5 billion parameters, but GPT-3 includes 175 billion parameters and is considered as a giant in comparison with GPT-2 as revealed in slide number 36. Here you see what GPT-3 can do. It can write a software code, it can write SQL parameter, and it can go for different kind of creative writing, short stories, poem, including scientific writing. So let us go for an experiment what GPT-3 and GPT-2 can do, so that you can have an idea that where this academic plagiarism, AI text generation can affect the plagiarism business of different kind of anti-plagiarism tool. So here in the slide number 37 you see I have written myself a sample paragraph related to library discovery and a sample head a clue or a line. First one meant for GPT-2 and the next one meant for GPT-3. Now let us go for some kind of experiment with GPT-2 based tools. So here you see I have taken a tool, GPT-2 tool, and here you see the paragraph I have pasted there and simply pressed or triggered the auto generation of text through the tab command, and it can generate a full grammatically correct contextualized sentence. I have given a paragraph, it can generate a sentence. Now at the end of the AI written paragraph, if I again press a tab, it will give me a few suggestions that what should be the next sentence. I can pick up the value and I can go on writing my paragraph in this particular fashion. So what are the anti-plagiarism tools? And this is another experiment with GPT tool. Another tool is there. I have given a paragraph, it produced a paragraph. So this kind of advancement is happening, but the question is that what are the different kind of anti-plagiarism tools are doing to combat this this kind of AI text generation. So Turnitin came up recently with a program called authorship checking. It can automatically check whether a particular piece of writing is from a particular author or not. And Unicheck came with an intelligent program called Emma, which basically can detect whether a piece of writing is from a particular author or not. But this two model has got serious problem and serious limitation in one aspect, that we need to fit lot many writings to to the computer system to indicate the writing style of that particular person, and then only it can detect against a newly given paragraph whether this paragraph is written by that person or not. So with AI detection, that may not be practical and it is failing. This is actually related to GPT-3. As I said that it is a much more improvement in comparison with the GPT-2. So here you see in the lead part I have given in the slide number 43, in the upper part I have given a clue, a sentence, library discovery system and so on. It can generate a related contextually paragraph on the basis of that lead sentence. So that is the advancement, and what syntactic anti-plagiarism can deal with, because these are not detectable by any anti-plagiarism software. Every time they will produce newly contextualized text. Those are not part of any of the databases and any of the system, and so fairly the anti-plagiarism tools including Google search will fail to detect the origin of the source. This is called the AI generation of textual materials. Some of the some persons came up with a very intelligent approach. They are using AI to stop AI writing. So one of the person and Giulio Steras came up with a new approach to detect AI from by utilizing AI based programming. So it's amazingly it's a very simple and available free of cost as a Google Chrome plugin. You can download from the Chrome Web Store, you can install in your Google Chrome, and you can check whether a given text is AI generated, machine generated, or human generated. So let us go for another sets of experiment. So here you see, you can remember we created one particular paragraph. First part is written by me, human generated, and the second part is written by the machine generated or AI generated text, which is basically in slide number 46. You can see the machine generated part of this particular paragraph with light blue background. Now what three experiment I did so far for this particular deliberation. First, I selected the entire paragraph, so it's a mixture of human generated text and AI generated text. Then I call GP true or false from my Chrome plugin and extension. Then if I click the evaluate button here, you see it gives me a caution that according to the detector there is a 1.45% chance that the selected text written by a human. So it is correctly speaking that this is not actually wholly human generated. It's a mix up of AI generated and human generated text, and it gave me a red border related to that. Now let us select only the human generated part, that is the part written by me, and check whether GPT-2 can check point it out correctly or not. So another type, I have selected only that part produced by me. I call GPT-2, and here you can see in the slide number 50 it says that 88.68% chances that this particular selected text written by a human. Now in the next experiment, I have selected only that part which generated by AI, and here you see GPT-2 says that there is only 0.02% chance that this selected text is written by a human. So it is working very finely and free of cost, and this way we can detect AI with the help of AI. So the ball game is quite changing from syntactic similarity based anti-plagiarism tools. We have entered into the era of AI generation text, where AI is actually detecting AI generated text. Now, do you think that now that syntactic similarity based anti-plagiarism tools are outdated model? Yes, these have already been outdated, and sooner we know it, it is better. But don't think that it's a disaster. Rather, I think it's an opportunity. Why I am thinking so? Because instead of penalizing students for using AI tools like GPT-2 and GPT-3, experts suggest that we should use them as teachable moments, and here lies the great role of teachers and library professionals. We can teach them how to use this particular research support system intelligently, because using GPT-2 or GPT-3 requires a student or researcher to know enough about the material to determine whether the output is appropriate or applicable. If I put a starter statement in GPT-2, as you have seen, that it again takes several attempts to get back the proper contextualized sentence which is actually fitting with my objective of writing. So the key learning opportunity related to GPT-2 and GPT-3 is that it triggers the skill that researcher need to be focusing on, and library professional needs to promote information acquisition and assessment. So thank you very much. That's all about my delivery.